BBC staff are concerned that a recent report about newsreader Huw Edwards has been swept under the carpet after he resigned earlier this week. The former face of the BBC News operation, who fronted the Queen's funeral, election night coverage and the King's coronation, has been off since last July on full pay, amounting to over £320,000. This followed allegations that he paid a young person £35,000 for sexually explicit images. The parents of the alleged victim say that he was vulnerable as a youngster and that they are still suffering. The alleged young person involved denied the story, speaking through top London lawyers. No one knows who was paying for those lawyers, but I doubt it came from their pocket money. Following this massive news anchor's resignation from the corporation on medical grounds, staff at the Beeb are now worried that the results of an internal investigation into Huw Edwards will never be published. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? Employees are concerned that withholding the findings would mean that lessons can't be learnt, and a similar situation could arise in the future with another star. Katie Razzle, the BBC's widely respected media editor, said she thinks that the broadcaster would now consider the whole situation with Edwards parked. That's right, she says it's been parked. She told the Times newspaper, "My sense is that now he is no longer an employee, the review falls away and the matter is closed. It means some form of closure for the BBC, which can now proceed with its replacement plans." I'm sorry. The review doesn't fall away, the matter is not closed, and the situation is not parked. It's on a double yellow line. Because whether Edwards is guilty or not guilty of these allegations, none of which he has denied, he was effectively a public sector employee. His vast £439,000 salary paid for by an obligatory tax that old ladies are threatened with jail for not paying. Now, the BBC do have a duty of care to Huw Edwards and his mental health. It has been reported that he's been suffering badly and having treatment. And in his recovery, we wish him well. But the BBC also have a duty of care to payers of the licence fee, a duty of care to their staff, and a duty of care to transparency and the truth. At the moment, the organisation is behaving like the mafia or the Roman Catholic Church, a lofty, out-of-touch institution circling the wagons, looking out for its reputation and protecting its own. Until what happened comes to light and lessons are learned, then this story is not going away, and it taints an organisation which should be acting with the highest probity. The wrongdoing committed by evil paedophiles Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris at the BBC have been fully exposed. A painful but necessary process for the organisation so that those crimes can never be repeated. Now, of course, the allegations against Huw Edwards are not even in the same ballpark, and there was no criminality whatsoever. But if the behaviour of a BBC newsreader has upset colleagues, if it's been unprofessional or inappropriate, if that behaviour has hurt a vulnerable youngster, then that shouldn't be glossed over. It should be a major headline, not the "and finally." Meanwhile, radical climate change activist and BBC Nature presenter Chris Packham, a man who said that it may now be time to break the law to tackle climate change — he still works for the BBC, of course he does — appeared on the Laura Kuenssberg show on the Beeb on Sunday morning, criticising the Daily Sceptic, a well-researched and produced online newspaper which questions and debates the narrative around net zero, COVID, free speech and much besides. Well, the website was described by Packham as the Daily Sceptic, which he alleged has been put together by a bunch of professionals with close affiliations to the fossil fuel industry. The BBC has since shared the clip on Twitter, where it has been viewed more than 850,000 times. Kuenssberg also reposted the clip to her personal Twitter feed. Now, Toby Young, the founder of the Daily Sceptic and the media establishment's arch nemesis, has said that Packham's claims are both false and defamatory. Tellingly, the show in question has now been removed from the iPlayer, but with no correction and no apology. This is because our national broadcaster, which I largely admire and consider an important, valuable national asset, is behaving with impunity, conducting affairs in any way it sees fit, whatever the cost to others. Those remarks about the newspaper, the Daily Sceptic, were unchallenged by the presenter and were damaging to Toby Young and damaging to the Daily Sceptic itself, which, in my view, has been on the right side of history in its short existence, particularly regarding the utterly failed and highly damaging COVID lockdowns. The BBC increasingly lives in an unaccountable world of its own, for which you and I are paying a princely sum every year. The BBC is a bubble, and it needs a prick. Some would say it has too many already. I want the BBC to survive and thrive, but its behaviour of late is a real turn-off.